Look, before we even get into charts, filings, or countdowns, let me hit you with the thing nobody on crypto Twitter wants to admit. Most people screaming dates for the XRP ETFs have absolutely no clue how the process works. They're recycling screenshots, copying each other's guesses, and baiting the community with nonsense timelines that don't match anything coming out of the SEC or the Edgar system. And if you've been confused lately, that's exactly why. The misinformation is brutal. So, let's start this clean. You're going to walk out of this video with the actual timeline, not hype, not rumors, the real documented schedule for when these remaining spot XRP ETFs can and cannot go live. Because whether people like it or not, there is a specific 20-day clock, specific filings, and very specific legal language required. And without that language, there is no countdown, there is no activation. There is no launch. That's why this video matters. This is the one you share out. This is the one the community actually needs to see. This is how we get everyone aligned with reality instead of letting clickbait channels move the goalposts every 12 hours. So, let's hook into the core question everyone keeps asking. When are the rest of the XRP ETFs going live? Here's the blunt truth. Some of them are ready. Some of them are behind, and a few of them completely botched their filings. That's why Canary went live early. That's why Bitwise is next. That's why Gayscale and Franklin Templeton are lining up right behind them. And that's why WisdomTree 21 shares and CoinShares are basically stuck on the sidelines right now. If you don't include the required become effective under Section 8A language, your S1 literally cannot self-activate. It's that simple. But here's the part most people forgot. The SEC doesn't need to approve anything anymore. This isn't January. This isn't the Bitcoin ETF. Drama. This is the new process they laid out while the government was shut down. The door is cracked open. Any issuer who updates the S1 properly can start their own 20-day countdown, no approval needed, no public comment window, no political theater. And honestly, the fact that some billion-dollar firms still haven't added one paragraph of required text is embarrassing. You have to wonder who signed off on that. Either the lawyers missed it, or someone internally doesn't care about losing first-mover advantage. Either way, they're leaving money on the table. But let's zoom out for a second. Why does this matter? Why does everyone suddenly care about launch sequencing? Because the first wave already triggered the sell, the news dip, and historically, that's where the biggest upside comes from. When Bitcoin ETFs launched, the dip was the loading zone before the monster rally. Same with ETH. Same with every asset that's gone through this process. The pattern is crystal clear. So, here's your hook for the full video. We are entering the tightest ETF window XRP has ever seen, and the community finally needs the real timeline, not the fantasy version. In the next part, we're going to break down exactly which ETFs already triggered the countdown, which ones go live next, and which issuers screwed up their filings and are now weeks behind. No BS, no hype, just the real verified timeline straight from the SEC database. Alright, so let's get straight into the part that most people skip, the part where all the hype collapses because reality never matches the Twitter noise. Everyone keeps shouting dates like they're pulling them from some secret insider source. But the truth is embarrassingly simple. Most people aren't even checking the filings. They're just repeating whatever sounds bullish enough to farm engagement. And that's exactly why so many XRP holders end up with unrealistic expectations and then act confused when things don't launch tomorrow. So, let's do what almost nobody bothers to do. Look at the actual S1 filings, the real timestamps, the exact language required, and the missing updates that are causing all this confusion. Because once you see the pattern, you'll understand why the timeline looks the way it does when and why half of CT is straight up misleading people by pretending everything is a mystery. It isn't. The data is right there. You just have to look at it. First thing that matters, removing the delay amendment. This is the entire game. You don't remove it. You don't start the countdown. You remove it. You start the 20-day automatic activation window. That's the whole mechanism. No SEC approval, no last-minute blessing, no magic, just Section 8A of the Securities Act. the exact line of text that must be inserted word for word, and that line is where most issuers are messing up. Canary Capital included it properly. That's why they went live on November 13th with zero resistance. Bitwise included it. Grayscale included it. Franklin Templeton included it. And that's why all four of those ETFs are locked into their timelines with no uncertainty. Everyone else, they dropped the ball hard. Here's what most XRP influencers won't tell you. WisdomTree, 21 shares, and CoinShares didn't include the language. They filed updates, they made noise. They posted documents, but the key sentence was missing, which means legally the countdown never started. This isn't subjective. It's not opinion. It's literal compliance procedure. If that line is missing, the delay clause remains active. The S1 is not self-activating, and the ETF cannot go live automatically. And honestly, it's shocking because leaving that sentence out is like forgetting to sign a contract before trying to enforce it. It's amateur hour. These are heavyweight issuers. They know better, or at least they should. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Everyone updated their filings on October 10th. It looked like the industry had coordinated. It looked like they were all preparing for launch. But even though all of them updated on the same day, only the ones who included the 8A activation clause triggered their clocks. That's why Canary didn't go live on October 30th. They didn't update their XRP filing until October 24th. And that's why the Litecoin and HAR ETFs got processed earlier, and those filings had the language included. So the staggered launch isn't a mystery, it's a paperwork issue. Bitwise, October 31st filing, 20 days, November 20th. Grayscale, November 3rd, filing 20 days, November 23rd Sunday. Launch likely, November 24th. Franklin Templeton, November 4th, filing 20 days, November 24th. Canary, October 24th, filing 20 days, November 13th, already live. Everything lines up perfectly once you stop listening to hype merchants and start reading the documents. And here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. If WisdomTree, 21 shares, and CoinShares don't fix their filings, they're not launching, period. Not this month, not next month, not at all until they include the required language. That's the whole reason they're lagging behind. And if the SEC really wanted to, they could sign off manually and make them go live instantly. But relying on that kind of intervention is wishful thinking. The only reliable timeline is the one dictated by filings, not fantasies. Alright, let's keep this rolling because this is the part everyone pretends they understand, but most people don't. This ETF timeline conversation only sounds simple until you actually break down who filed correctly, who screwed up, and who basically left millions sitting on the table because their legal teams couldn't bother to paste one paragraph of required language. And if you're holding XRP, this is the part you can't afford to ignore. Not if you actually care about timing, liquidity flows, and the pressure points that move this market. So, let's dig into the part nobody else is willing to dissect properly. Right now, we have 3 issuers completely out of the race. Not because the SEC blocked them, not because of some political delay, not because the deep state hates crypto, but because they simply did not update their S1 filings with the exact Section 8. A language required to activate the 20-day countdown. That's it. That's literally the entire problem. No conspiracies, just incompetence. And whether people want to admit it or not, those details matter. They control who gets the first wave of liquidity and who sits on the sidelines watching everyone else get inflows while their product is legally frozen. Let's break it down with zero. WisdomTree didn't update. 21 shares filed, but wrong language. CoinShares, same story, filed, but no activation trigger. And honestly, I don't care how big these firms are. If their compliance teams can't handle a 2S sentence requirement that everyone else has already executed successfully, that's on them. XRP holders shouldn't pretend it's part of the plan or secret timing. No, someone screwed up, period. Meanwhile, the firms that actually handled their paperwork, they're the ones locking in the launch windows that will shape XRP's first real institutional inflow cycle. Bitwise, November 20th. Grayscale, November 24th. Franklin Templeton. November 24th, Canary already live. Those dates aren't speculation. They're baked into federal filing rules. If anyone tries to tell you Franklin is going live tomorrow or tonight or any minute now, they either didn't check the filings or they're deliberately farming views. And here's the real takeaway. A staggered launch is 10 times better for XRP than everything going live at once. You get repeated attention cycles, repeated headlines, repeated inflow windows. It forces the narrative to stay alive instead of blowing everything in one single newsday burst. Most people won't admit this because they love the idea of instant fireworks, but markets don't move sustainably on fireworks. They move on sustained narrative pressure, and that's exactly what a rolling ETF launch creates. But let's also be real. If these lagging issuers decide to clean up their filings tomorrow, the entire timeline can shift again. Nothing is locked except the countdowns that have already started. Everything else depends on whether filing teams wake up and do their job. This is why you don't rely on Twitter rumors. You don't rely on thumbnails screaming today. You rely on legal documents, timestamps, and rule-based countdowns. That's it. All right, let's cut through the nonsense because most people in this space are still operating on opium instead of facts. We're now at the point in the ETF timeline where everyone suddenly thinks all 6 ETFs are going to magically go live together, or Wisdom Tree will surprise everyone any minute. No. Stop. Look at the filings. Look at the Edgar timestamps. Look at the language required. Most of these firms messed up their paperwork, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you smart. It makes you gullible. Here's the truth. Once you understand how the 20-day window works, the entire situation becomes painfully obvious. We already know who's ahead, who's late, and who completely dropped the ball. And honestly, if these billion-dollar issuers can't even copy-paste a single mandatory sentence into their S1s, then stop expecting them to surprise the market with anything other than incompetence. This isn't rocket science, it's basic compliance. Bitwise and Gayscale figured it out, Franklin Templeton figured it out, Canary figured it out, the rest, they're asleep at the wheel. Now here's where people really need a wake-up call. The timeline stagger actually helps XRP more than it hurts. Slow structured inflows are way healthier than a giant ETF mega launch day that pumps price for 12 hours and then collapses into a liquidity cliff. But try convincing the moon boys of that. They'd rather live in fantasy land than accept how real institutional flows work. You want sustained demand, you want serious capital rotation. Then staggered activation is exactly how you get it. This is how Bitcoin ETFs grew into hundreds of billions. Not by dropping everything on the same day, by letting the inflows build week after week. Next point, and this one always triggers people. And stop acting like these filings and countdowns guarantee an overnight price explosion. That's delusion. ETFs don't move markets instantly, flows move markets. A grows over time, not on day one. The only reason most people panic or celebrate prematurely is because they don't understand how regulated products actually operate behind the scenes. Everything you're watching right now is a multi-month ramp-up, not some flip the switch and XRP goes parabolic fantasy. And while we're being honest, let's address the stupidity spreading across CT. No, there is no secret 18th of the month activation. No, Franklin Templeton is not fast-tracking. No, Wisdom Tree didn't file silently. If someone tells you that without showing line-by-line filings from Edgar, they're lying to you or using you for engagement. This is why so many people become exit liquidity. They listen to noise instead of documentation. One more thing most won't acknowledge. XRP's pullback right now isn't bearish and it's textbook. Every major ETF launch across every asset class dumps first, rips after. Bitcoin did it, Ethereum did it, Solana did it. Acting shocked now only proves you didn't study past ETF cycles. Jobs of smart investors identify the distortion. Recognize the setup, ignore the hysteria, and understand that this is the accumulation zone before the real inflows hit. So here's where we are heading into the final part. Bitwise goes live first. Gayscale and Franklin Templeton follow. The rest are stuck until they fix their filings. And the market is currently giving you the exact same discounted window Bitcoin had before its run from 38,000 to 120,000. Most people will miss it because they're focused on the wrong things. Let's wrap this up the way it needs to be wrapped with a reality check, Nodium. Because too many people in this space are acting like these ETF dates automatically guarantee some explosive upside. And that's exactly how traders get blindsided. You've already seen how messy and inconsistent these filings are. Some issuers nailed the language and are lining up for launch. Others completely botched it and basically sidelined themselves. That alone should tell you the landscape isn't as polished or inevitable as influencers pretend. Now here's the bigger point you need drilled into your head. ETF launches are not catalysts by themselves, they're just access pipes. What matters is liquidity, flows, institutional appetite, macro conditions, and timing. But most people ignore that because it's easier to scream ETF shaggy or pump. You saw what happened with Bitcoin. You saw what happened with Ethereum. The sell the news flush was the real gift, but barely anyone had the discipline to take advantage of it until after the move was already obvious. And XRP is walking down the exact same path. You're in the pullback window right now. Whether you use it or waste it is your decision. Nobody's coming to rescue you later if you chase green candles and get wrecked again. As for the remaining ETF issuers, yes, the SEC could wake up tomorrow and wave everything through. Or they could drag it out, or they could keep letting firms go live through countdown rules. Without making any public moves, stop pretending you know the timeline. Stop acting like anyone online has secret access. The only certainty here is uncertainty, and that's why you need to operate like a grown adult investor, not a wishful gambler. So here's the position we're actually in. Bitwise is on deck Gayscale, and Franklin Templeton are lining up right behind. Wisdom Tree, 21 shares, and CoinShares are sleeping at the wheel. Liquidity inflows will dictate everything. Not hype, not headlines, not influencers. The current correction across the board may turn out to be the most important accumulation phase in the last 2 years if you play it intelligently. Use the data, not Twitter, not clickbait, not whatever fantasy dates the rumor mill spits out. And now the part I'll repeat every single time, whether you like it or not. Nothing here is financial advice. This is not a signal, not a guarantee, and not a promise. It's analysis. You need to do your own research, understand your own risk tolerance, and make your own decisions. If you don't know why you're buying or holding something, you shouldn't be in the market at all. That's your reality check. That's the truth.